congregation, and welcome back to the Unveiled podcast. I'm super excited to have Katrina Spivey here today. We're going to be starting the parenting series for the summer. So glad to have you here.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
It's going to be wonderful. Welcome to the Unveiled podcast. Okay, Katrina, so I know you, but I would love it if you would tell me just a little bit about what it is that you do and how you got started and interested in your career field.
All right, great. So I am a licensed professional counselor and a registered play therapist. I came to this in a very odd way, to be honest. I've always loved working with people and helping people. So what I did in the beginning was I thought, you know what? I want to be a nurse since the age of 5. And that was my plan. I was going to be a nurse. And then my mom became a nurse. I'm like, oh, see, I should be a nurse. In high school, I became a certified nursing assistant. I did that at the age of 16 or right before I turned 16. And I started working in a hospital. I worked in a newborn nursery.
Oh, how neat.
Oh, it was wonderful. I absolutely love babies.
Yes.
So that was a lot of fun.
I think a lot of people do.
Yeah, no, definitely. I also worked in labor and delivery. So I got to see babies being born, take the babies out to the moms. I had the best time.
Oh my gosh, how
It was
wonderful.
wonderful, but it just didn't fit. I just didn't feel that that's where I was being led. So I started school or college, and I went to our community college and decided, you know what, I think I'm going to go ahead and keep trying nursing. And then it just, again, didn't fit right. So I stopped, got married, moved to El Paso, and we were there for a little over a year.
Really?
Yes, and that was an interesting experience being so far away from home.
Right.
But I went to UT El Paso while I was there and worked on a teaching degree. Because I thought, you know what, I still want to help. I still want to be with children, so I'll teach. So I did teaching with an emphasis on music.
How neat.
It was really cool, and I did that for about a year. We moved back home so we could be closer to family because we really missed family. And I went to what at the time was Southwest Texas instead of Texas State. Continued working on the teaching degree. But again, that just wasn't feeling right. So during that time, we got pregnant with our first child, and then our next two are twins. And at that time, we decided, you know what? This is what I want to do. I want to stay home with my kids for as long as I can.
Right.
We ended up letting me stay home until the kids were in the youngest were in kindergarten.
Oh, what a blessing.
So I was with them for a long time.
That's a blessing.
Loved every minute of it. During that time, I kept thinking, I want to go back. I do want to have a career, but the ones I chose just weren't it.
Right.
So one day, I call this, kind of the aha moment. We were driving back from my in-laws, a 4.5-hour trip.
Wow.
And during that time, we talked about it and like, well, what do I want to do? Realized that I loved helping people more than anything. And people would come to me and ask for advice, and I just loved to help them find their right path.
Yeah.
So during that time, we talked and talked for the full 4 hours. And my husband said, what about psychology? And I said, I love psychology.
Yes.
And he said, well, how about counseling? What do you think about that? And all of a sudden, I just felt like God's light shone down, and he said, that's it. This is what I want you to do.
Yes.
It took you a while to figure it out, but I'm glad you're here.
That is so wonderful, because sometimes it does take other people in our life, right, to show us these things that maybe have been sitting in front of us.
Yes.
Because you knew that you wanted to help people.
Right.
And again, nursing, very much a helpful field.
Very much so.
Teaching, very much a helpful field. My dad's a nurse, my mom is a teacher.
Okay.
And, that's just something that when you think of people who help, those are 2 careers where your mind immediately goes to. But how amazing that you still had this feeling of wanting to help, even though you knew those things, okay, they're not quite the right fit.
Right.
And then all it took was that 4.5-hour drive.
Yes.
Do the best thinking in the car, I think.
Definitely.
And your husband saying, hey, what about this? That is so cool, the way God uses experiences and other people.
Yes, definitely. And that's what he did. And so that's how I ended up in this area. I went to Texas State. I was going to there at the time, finished up my undergrad in psychology, and then went to Capella University online because my kids were still young. So I wanted to be home with them.
Right.
So I ended up going there online, had to go in for 2 residencies during that whole program,
Right.
and then graduated with my master's. And then began the long journey of getting the 3,000 hours it takes
Oh
to
my
become
gosh.
a
Oh my
therapist.
gosh. Yes.
So yes, during that time, I also knew that I wanted to focus on children. And that was where I wanted to be. So I already knew I wanted to be a registered play therapist.
Right.
So I started that process as well and started taking classes toward that. And by the time I became a fully licensed therapist, I also then became a fully certified registered play therapist.
Oh, and so they're not like you can't become a therapist and say, okay, I'm a therapist and I'm going to do children or I'm going to do adult. You have to have specialties. I did not know that.
Well, the thing is, it's a lot of people work with children
Mm-hmm.
and they don't have the registered play therapy behind their name,
Okay,
the
I
RPT.
see.
You can't call yourself an RPT, which is a registered play therapist,
Right.
without getting the certification.
I see.
You can still work with children, but
Right.
it is best practice to make sure that you have all the training you can to know
Right.
how to work with them.
Yeah.
Same thing with different types of modalities. So cognitive behavioral therapy, which I do, you need training in that as well.
Right.
I also do sand tray therapy, which is basically play therapy in miniature. I
Fun.
also have training in that. So trauma therapy, you want to make sure you are a trained trauma therapist.
I feel like that's a really big one.
Yes.
If you're going to be in that specialty,
Mm-hmm.
that's a big one that you want to have.
Definitely.
But,
yeah.
wow, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So everyone can do
Right.
therapy
Mhm.
that they're licensed, right? But they do need specialties, in my opinion.
Right.
Or at least they have that opportunity to say, yes, I have trained really well in this field,
Right.
and I know what I'm doing.
Yes.
There are different types of play therapy, though. I am what's considered a child-centered play therapist.
Okay, so my next question was,
Yes.
what is play therapy?
Yes.
Who is it for?
Mm-hmm.
I would love to hear more about what it is, and I didn't even know there was different types of it.
There are. So you can be more of a directive therapist, where you're directing the child in doing certain things. Child-centered play therapy, which I practice, goes along with my theory, that I learned when I was in school and I truly believe in, and that's person-centered therapy.
Okay.
For me, person-centered therapy is about the relationship. So if you don't have that relationship, then I believe that it's really hard to make a change.
Oh, yeah.
So that is my belief whenever it comes to therapy. So that relationship is key to change. And that's the way I look at it. So when a child comes into my office, what I want to do is make them feel comfortable, let them know they're in a safe space where they can talk, say whatever they want or not. Because the cool thing about play therapy is they don't have to talk. I work with nonverbal children too, and they don't have to say a word because children's natural way of communicating is play. That's how they talk to us.
Yes.
Sometimes we don't notice it, but they really are telling us things. All of the toys they choose, those are their words.
Yeah.
So when they come in my office and they choose certain things and I'll watch them do it over and over again, I know they're trying to tell me something. And it's amazing.
That is so neat. Her office is so cool. We went there, it's been probably a year ago now since I've been, and it's full of toys and dress-up clothes and art, and I'm sure it's like a wonderland for a child when they walk in, because as an adult, I was like, man, it'd be really fun to spend a couple hours in here.
Exactly.
I'm a little jealous of you to get to do that. So
every day I get to walk into that, and
yes.
it never gets boring or tiring.
That's how you know it's the right job.
Exactly. And children walk in and they go, wow. I see that look on their faces, and I know that they're going to be able to express themselves so well, and I get excited.
Oh, that's so exciting.
It's wonderful. But play therapy really is a great way for children to express what's going on inside.
Right.
Without talking about it, because a lot of times they don't have the words to use.
Right.
Right? They need to be able just to interact and play with you, and then they can show you, okay, this is what I'm feeling, because those words are hard to come by. And when a child, especially young children, but children of all ages, they just don't have the vocabulary or the complete understanding to let us know what they're thinking.
Right.
So when they're throwing fits or they're doing different things that we see as parents, we see that happen. a lot of times it's just because they don't have the words to tell us.
Right. Or I kind of wonder too if, as an adult, it can be hard to open up about our feelings, and maybe little kids don't understand that quite yet.
Right.
But I wonder if they also kind of already from society feel this pressure of, I can't show those feelings.
I would agree.
Do you agree with that?
I totally agree with that. It's really hard for them when they're looking, well, what are they going to think about me if I say this? Will mom or dad be mad at me?
Right.
If I tell them how I'm feeling, will they understand me? Because they don't always feel understood.
Right.
Because they don't understand themselves either.
Right.
So.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that was a wonderful explanation.
Good. I'm glad.
So talking a little bit about kids' emotions, and especially like you just said, what is mom, what is dad going to think if I say this? Are they going to be upset? Will they be happy if I tell them this? I'd like to know if you have some tips or things that you recommend for parents to use in their home so that they are that open space for their kids to be able to bring the good, the bad, are they going to be mad? Are they going to be happy? They're just open to talk.
Right.
What can we do as parents to have that open communication?
Definitely. That's a tricky one too.
I bet.
Right? Because children, they get scared easily because they want to please you.
Yes.
They want to please their parents. They want to please their teachers, whoever they're interacting with. They even want to please their friends. So they're going to decide, well, if I say this, are they going to be upset? And it might not be that full conscious thought, but it's something inside that fear that, oh, but I want to be liked, right? We all want to be liked.
Right.
And children especially, they want to be liked. That being said, what I always suggest is whenever your child comes to you with something, try not to overreact. It may seem big, but then just remember, oh, but they're a child, and maybe it's not as big as I think it is.
Right.
So they see that you're open to conversation. It's a safe space. I can tell my parent anything because ultimately we want them to be able to tell us anything when they're older too. Right. So if it's just something little and they broke maybe your favorite dish, right? Say, you know what? Accidents happen. It's okay. And giving them that space to say, oh, well, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was.
Right.
And they still love me and accept me for that. So if we do it with the little things, we always say, what is it? Don't cry over spilled milk, right?
Right.
Well, we want to make that a thing too for these kids. If they do spill something, well, you know what? We've got a mop. We're okay. And just being really open to anything that happens. Those things are really important. That's a good way for them to be able to see they can communicate with you without feeling like they're going to be judged heavily or get in a lot of trouble for certain things.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I kind of have a question that kind of goes off of that. So I have a 4-year-old, a little girl, and then I also have a 1-year-old little boy. You know this.
Oh, I know.
But my 4-year-old little girl is very imaginative.
Yes.
And loves to play pretend, which I love. And I love to kind of eavesdrop, like when she's playing by herself, to hear what she's doing.
Right.
And so a couple of friends of mine who also have little girls that they're in the same class. We're talking the other day, and one of the things that all of our kids are kind of wanting to play right now is this good versus bad or mean versus nice thing. Avery will say things like, Mom, we're going to play, and you be the mean sister, and I'll be the nice sister. And how do I respond to that? First of all, should I be worried about that? Is it normal? Is that something that all kids kind of go through? And how do I respond?
That is a really good question. So talking to you, I know that your child has not experienced trauma. Right? So we look at that first. As a play therapist, I look at that and say, all right, we have a couple of types of trauma. Big T trauma, we call it, and little T trauma. Little T trauma are the smaller things in life that a lot of us experience, right? And then there's big T trauma, and those are things that are really, really difficult when a child has been hurt or there's something really difficult going on in their life. But knowing your child, I know that's not the case, right? So this is a very normal way to play things out developmentally.
Okay.
So developmentally, what she's doing is playing off of things she's heard and seen. Even if you don't watch TV very much, but she watches a show every now and then. If she watches even a Disney show, right? There's always
Bluey.
that theme. Bluey, yes, Bluey. There's always that theme of good versus evil,
Right.
you know, wrong, right. And you'll see that in school too. So in classes, they'll notice, you know, a little friend being unkind to another friend. And they see that and they want to play that out. So what I always tell parents is, let's look at this. Is this normal? Yes. Developmentally? Yes. So we're okay with that. It's okay to play this and to respond, say, okay, yes, let's play that. I do in my playroom. When they want me to be the bad guy or the good guy, I play along. I let them lead, right? And then what they're going to do is they're going to keep playing this out until they've worked it out in their mind to understand it.
I see.
Right? And this is what play is, and that's what play therapy is too, because they keep working it out until it's done.
Right.
Until they have extinguished that concern or that wonder about it. And then they move to something else. So you'll notice they'll move to a new play theme.
Right.
So I would say for Avery, no, this is a normal thing.
Okay.
Because she's just wondering, why is that happening? Why is there good? Why is there bad?
Right.
Right? And even in church, we talk about that, right?
Well, we do. Yes, you're exactly right.
Yeah. So that's going to be something she's heard in Sunday school too. When there's good things and not so good things.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So I would say play along.
Okay.
The more imaginative a child is, the better, in my opinion. So definitely play along and enjoy that.
Okay.
And know that she's working through something.
Okay.
And a lot of times, if you're playing the bad guy, sometimes you can make yourself the good guy.
Oh,
and they can see that people change.
Okay.
And it doesn't have to be good, bad.
Oh, I love that.
So that's a good way
I
to do
really
it.
love the way, because I never even thought, like, okay, because when I play the bad guy, sometimes I'm like, I'm being kind of mean, but you're telling me to be mean, so.
Exactly.
It's interesting to know that it is normal.
Right.
And that it's okay to play along and let them process that, because as you just said earlier, that's their way of processing things. We as adults hopefully talk them out with, like you did with your husband.
Hopefully, right.
And with kids, that's how they talk them out, or that's how they process them, is they play it out, which I love.
Exactly.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So we want them to do that.
Okay.
And we want them to use that imagination.
Yeah.
And work through all of these life's issues right now. And with you there to guide, that's even better.
Oh, good.
Because you're right there and you're with her and she's doing it in a safe space. And
Definitely.
Safe person too.
Definitely.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's really good advice.
Good. I'm glad. I hope that helps.
Oh, it absolutely does. And it kind of leads me to another one.
Okay.
So I have questions about when we have a multiple child household.
Yes.
Even if it's twins.
Right.
You've got different personalities. And I'm sure you know that because you have twins.
I do.
Your twins probably have different personalities.
Oh, so different.
Yes. So it's common, but how do we as parents meet them in the middle? So going back to myself, because this is my situation.
Right.
Although I know I'm not the only one.
Sure.
Avery is 4 years old, very imaginative, always been very inquisitive about things, and very girly.
Yes.
Loves singing, dancing, princess, anything like that, and loves pretend. Beckett, my 1-year-old son, is, everybody just says, oh, he's all boy. He's all boy. Because he is a wild man. And I just say, he's a wild man. He's climbing into things. Temper already.
Yes.
And so people will say, it's because they're the second child. It's because he's a boy. But it probably, their personalities are going to be different regardless.
Exactly.
How do we as parents meet our children in the middle and, connect with each child without trying to make them the same child?
Definitely.
Because that would be a little bit easier, but...
It would be, wouldn't it?
Yes.
I see this a lot too. Whenever you have to have a large group of children, everyone wants to make them the same.
Yes.
We try to put them in this little box to keep them doing what we need them to, so it's easier for us. And that's where we have to think about it when we look at our kids. Right? Because they are totally different.
Right.
Totally different the way they interact with people, the feelings they have. They're born with that, right? They're born with their personalities. A lot of times you can feel it in utero. They're going to be different, right? So, no, definitely you want to look at each child as an individual and see what they need.
Right.
That's how we meet them where they're at. Of course, we have to have expectations and consequences,
Right.
no matter what, and they're going to be the same in the family.
Mhm.
Generally speaking, sometimes we change them a little bit based on the child and what their
Okay.
needs are.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
No, definitely. If you have a child that's more sensitive,
Okay.
one that really needs a little more hands-on,
Mhm.
then that's going to be a child that you're not going to probably come down as hard on.
Right.
You're going to want and sit and talk with that child
Okay.
and say, all right, so I can tell this is hard on you.
Mhm.
Let's talk about that. Obviously waiting until they've calmed down.
Yes.
Because until they calm down, they cannot think straight.
Yes.
Right. We could get into all of the brain theory, but we won't do that today.
Well, we may have to come back and do that because I know that's so helpful to learn.
It is. It's amazing to know more about the brain theory. And
I don't know much about it, but just from the things that I've heard you talk about and seen, on other podcasts and things, there's a lot to that, and we're just really seems like scraping the surface on it. So we may have to have another podcast
conversation.
Yes.
Definitely. But no, with the child, you want them to calm down.
Yeah.
And then if it's a sensitive child, then you sit with them and say, wow, this seems like this was a hard day for you.
Right.
I don't know why. Do you know why this was hard?
Mm.
And maybe they'll say something. We want to give them that power to be able to say, yes, it was hard. I didn't like when this happened, or, my friend said this. And they don't know sometimes it might have been what set them off earlier in the day.
Right.
So when a child comes home from school or preschool, wherever they are, and they're melting down that afternoon or evening, and you don't know why because everything seems fine.
Right.
It could be that someone during the day said, I don't like that picture you're coloring, or it's ugly, or your hair looks funny. It could be anything. It could be something so small that we'd be like, well, that's okay.
Right.
But to them, it was their world.
Right.
So we want to get to the bottom of that. And they may not be able to verbalize it. But if anything, we sit there and we say, yes, this seems like this was a hard day for you.
Right.
And if you can't talk about it, that's okay, but I'm here.
Okay.
And I will help you through this. What could we do right now that would make you feel a little better? Make you feel a little less stressed? Do you want to have some cuddles? Do you want to color, draw? What would you like to do? And let them do that. I even often tell my parents to make a calm down box. And I love my calm down boxes because we talk about using all the 5 senses. So you have something that's going to work with your hands. And one thing that's really cool when we talk about the brain is that there's a direct link with things you do with your hands to your brain that can calm the nervous system.
Like a puzzle.
Like a puzzle,
Okay.
like clay.
Okay.
I always suggest like that Crayola hard air dry clay.
It's Model Magic.
No, not Model
Model Magic.
That stuff is a lot more squishy. This stuff comes in tub.
Oh, in the big tub. Yes. Okay.
And I love that because that is helping them to really, first of all, work their hands, which is always good for a child and their development. But there is this correlation because they can start just kneading it and messing with it, making something out of it, and it really does affect the nervous system. It helps.
So you're talking about like a physical motion that helps to get.
Yes.
Okay, I understand.
Yes.
I understand.
And then when it dries, they get to paint it, and they've got this creation that they made that came out of something difficult, but something cool came out of it. Right? So I like that. But when we talk about our little calm down box, okay, so what is something that's visually appealing to this child that could be in that box? I always say smells are so important, and they definitely go to the brain, and they help you to calm. So peppermint is mine. I love peppermint or spearmint. So I have little roller balls of those, and I will put those on. But for a child, you could put some essential oil on a cotton ball, put it in a little baggie, and close it up. And then when they need their calm down box, they pick it up, they open it up and smell it.
Oh.
And they just go, right?
How neat.
So they have that music, something they can hear for that part of your senses, something to taste even, a little something that helps them taste and go, oh, yeah, okay, so that changes the brain around a little bit too. We're rewiring the brain during this time.
Right.
A training that I had a long time ago talked about the fact that when a child is upset, hard candies actually help them to calm down, to suck on that. Yes. So you think about a baby and their pacifier or their phone.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. Yes.
That calms them, right? So a child, if they have that hard candy and it's got that taste and they're sucking on it like a dum-dum lollipop, right? That will help them to calm down. And it's amazing when I've seen it work. And I just think that is something we should try because it really is helpful for them.
Right.
So when we look at those five senses, what would appeal most to your child? That's what you put in your calm down box.
So a calm down box may be different for each child that's in your home.
Definitely.
Okay,
So when
I
we're
understand.
talking about the differences in children, it's going to be different for
Okay.
sure. You might have a child that's, talk about fidgets. How about fidgets?
Okay.
Some children love a fidget that's really soft and squishy.
Mhm.
Others like them to have some kind of a texture on them.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe one child needs that and another child needs the other, like the textured one.
Right.
Right? So you're going to look at what's important for that child. Not every calm down box works. So when a child walks into my office, I find it interesting. I learn their personalities by what areas that they would prefer to be in or what fidgets they pick up.
Right.
That's what's important to them.
That is so interesting.
So definitely giving them that opportunity to help you, first of all, if you have like Avery being 4, help you pick out what goes in her calm down box. And she knows that that's for the times when she's having trouble.
Right.
And she just needs to calm herself. At first, you'll help her to get to that box. Over time, she'll realize, I need my calm down box. Can we get it? Yes.
Very cool.
So it's a really good way to look at it.
That is so interesting.
Yeah.
And I like how you can customize it
Mm-hmm.
for every child.
Definitely.
That, you've biological kiddos, foster kiddos, anybody who comes into your home, they can have their own. I mean, even as adults, it might be nice to have a calm down box.
But if you think about it as adults, don't we have things that we go to that make
absolutely.
us feel calm?
Yes.
Maybe a specific drink like a juice or, something it brings us back to our childhood when we felt a little safer or something like that. Or, I don't know, little personal, but I have Squishmallows. I love a Squishmallow.
Yeah.
And, yes, I'm an adult, but I will love them.
Hey.
And they're great because they're soft and I can just hold on to it if I'm feeling a little stressed.
Yes.
Right? So I think that we as adults need it too.
I think smell, when you talked about smell, for some reason smells, and I don't know if this is just like my sensory sense, I guess you could say sense of choice, but like smells are a huge thing for me. They can transport you back to any time. And so like we always have candles in our house. I love for the house to smell good.
Right.
Because if I walk in the house and my house does not smell right, it throws me off. And it would be it's so interesting that something so small can really throw you off.
Right.
And kids have that too.
They do. They're just like us in that way. It will throw them off if something's out of place. And that makes them kind of concerned.
And they notice it too.
Oh, yes.
They're very observant.
Yes, they are.
Yes.
And they will tell you right away.
Absolutely.
Like, that doesn't seem right. Children walk into my playroom and they can tell if something didn't get put back where it belongs.
Oh, how funny.
They will fix it. They will put it back where it came from.
Oh my gosh.
Always they will do that. And my playroom is very organized on purpose.
Yes.
Because you want them to feel safe and it needs to be consistent.
Right.
Right. I did that with my children growing up too. So when we talk about the differences in children, right, I had that with my kids and I made sure that everything had its place for them so they knew where it was because I knew how each would react and they all reacted differently and one didn't care. And one cared a lot. And then there was one that was middle of ground, but I had 3, so they were all different. And they all reacted differently. So making sure that I knew that and how I could help them to calm down. And I would do that in my own house. Well, I do that in my playroom as well. And everything has its place so that you come in and you feel immediately comfortable. Because a lot of times children, even those who haven't been through trauma, they come home from school that's been a little chaotic maybe because they're with a bunch of children that they're not with on a daily basis. And so they come home and they're a little overwhelmed, a little tired, and they need things to kind of be comforting and feel like home and feel like this is consistent. I feel good. I feel safe.
So consistency a lot of times adds to safety or can not necessarily equal safety, but it definitely goes hand in hand.
It does. Yeah. It really can. So think about a time when you've taken your child and you've done something extra and you're up later than usual or you're on vacation. There's going to be dysregulation.
Right.
Because this is so different. And their bodies and minds don't regulate as quickly as we do.
Right.
We're able to rationalize it out a little bit better than a child is. So for them, it's a little off-putting because, we're not in our normal space.
Right.
So if you've got a child who's used to a messy floor They're going to get upset if the floor is no longer messy.
Right, right.
Right? But if you've got a child who's used to things being clean and put away, then they're going to feel more comfortable with that.
Right.
So looking at your child, figuring out what their needs are is the best way to help them.
That makes me feel really good.
Good.
I think I really liked that piece of advice
Good.
because we as parents are learning, as our kids are growing, we're all learning together and learning that it's okay to have different things for each child.
Yes.
You don't have to have all of your children be the exact same. And even if you're a teacher, right? Not all of your kids in your classroom are going to be the same.
Right.
And so having that knowledge that things could be different at their house and they may learn a little differently is really good to hear.
Yes, it is very important to know that because we have teachers who are very good at in tune with that. And I love to see that because they realize each child is different and they each have different home lives and different backgrounds.
Right.
And that's a really good thing. So I love that you're talking about teachers because that's something that is a very big part of their lives. And so it's so important that they have that teacher that understands that.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, I don't remember what the statistic is, but if you think about it, a child is in school huge chunk of the day for most of the year.
Exactly.
So,
yes. So they are with their teacher and their peers a lot more than they are at home. So that's why home is that safe space.
Right.
When they get there, they've got that family that sometimes they can be themselves with because they've come off of a really rough day and they can just scream.
Yes.
And we need to let them have that moment, whatever that looks like. We don't want them screaming at us or hurting us.
Right.
But learning how to just regulate those emotions that have gotten overwhelmed during the day because they are there so much.
Let's talk about that for just a second.
Okay, sure.
So let's say we have a child that's having a meltdown. They've come home from school and they are just dysregulated.
Yes.
And we're starting this meltdown. You can see it coming.
Right.
Maybe you can see them getting worked up. Maybe we're starting to raise our voice a little bit.
Yeah.
What would you do? I can tell you in my house, a lot of the times it's you need to go into your room and calm down. But sometimes I wonder, is that the wrong thing to do? Because I don't want her to feel like she's alone in that.
Right.
But also, you cannot speak to me or your dad or your brother that way or the dog or whatever.
Right.
What is the best practice there? If we can see it happening, obviously a calm down box would be amazing.
Yes.
But let's say we're in the middle of a meltdown. What do we do?
So that's a really interesting question because for children, this is a difficult thing to understand.
Right.
And like I said before, when the part of your brain that is all about emotion is activated, we say that it hijacks the brain.
Okay.
So that prefrontal cortex, which is your the part of your brain that thinks rationally and able to make decisions that are good, gets cut off.
Interesting.
It literally shuts it down.
Interesting.
So I talk to my kiddos a lot about, we call it the lizard brain.
I've heard that.
Right? So if you think about a lizard, it's all over the place. Well, that's that emotional part. And we want them to get out of the emotional part and move back up into that rational thinking, right? So one thing as a parent to not do is to start lecturing, talking over and over again. And we do it, now that's in an ideal world, right? But we're human. And as parents, we do this.
Yes.
And we don't mean to, we really don't mean to, but we do because we're human and that's all there is to it. So what we need to keep in mind is this little body is so overwhelmed. This little mind does not even know how to express how they're feeling right now. So we take a step back and we say things like I said earlier, I know you're having a hard time. I see that. But let's calm down. If they're talking ugly, if they're kicking you or, the sibling or the dog, whatever they're doing, yes, they need to get into a different area.
Okay.
Sometimes I even suggest a parent to go in with a child. So if you've got a child who's very emotional, yes, they may feel like they're being exiled.
Right.
So sometimes that's a good time for you to go in with them. Make sure they're safe. Give them that time to calm down.
Okay.
On the other hand, if you've got a child who is fiercely independent, they may need that.
Time to be by themselves?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they may need to go into that room and be alone. And that might be the best thing for them.
Okay.
So it really, again, we go back to who is your child?
Okay.
What is their individual need? So I would say with a child who's emotional, just go in there with them.
Mm-hmm.
Sit with them. You don't have to interact because the more you talk to them, the more they escalate
Right.
and get angrier. So you go in there, you kind of sit and say, is there anything I can do for you? And if they yell no, which they might, then you say, okay, all right, I understand you need some time to calm down. I'll be here if you need me.
Okay.
Right? If it's your fiercely independent child, okay, well, go on in your room. And when you feel like you can talk again, come on out. I'll be here for you. And we can talk in that voice. Now, again, this is our ideal world, right? Because sometimes they actually just go straight to our nervous system.
Right.
And
oh, yes.
we become overwhelmed, right? And they do. It's like they have just touched a nerve and it just goes throughout our body.
Yes.
So we need to self-regulate. So in that moment, we might need to go in another room, calm ourselves before we get too upset with them and they start escalating too.
Right.
So that would be kind of something I would recommend that could be helpful.
That's super helpful. That's very, very
Okay,
helpful.
good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Super helpful because when we are disciplining, a lot of times it's okay, well, you're yelling and screaming and we don't yell and scream in this house.
Right.
And although we're trying to be calm, and I think I can speak for a lot of parents when
Yes.
I say this, although we're trying to be calm, when you've got a 3 or 4 or 2-year-old screaming at you, it is a little difficult.
It is.
And you've probably got a dog that's barking and dinner's on the stove. And so, yes, in an ideal world, but it's nice to know that it's also okay for you to take a step back and say, okay, I've got to calm myself down before I then we are both trying to talk each other's level.
And we call that modeling. So we're modeling the behavior that they need to be able to use.
Right.
So if we take a step back and tell them, I'm going to go in my room for a minute because I'm getting upset and I want to calm down. So you go do that, then they see that and you're modeling the right behavior so that they learn to do it.
Right.
And as they get older and they learn better self-regulation skills, they will do it on their own.
Oh,
which
that
is amazing.
So great. Yes, that's awesome. That's what we want.
And for those people who have teenagers, that I understand can be, and I know, be really difficult.
Yes.
I would be lying if I said that I never yelled at my children. I would, and I don't want to be a liar.
Yes.
Because I have.
Yeah.
And I have said things I wish I hadn't. I wish I had have taken a step back, especially during those teenage years. Those were rough for me. But we made it because we figured each other out and realized how to take a step back and not treat each other unkindly.
Right.
Right. So for those who are dealing with the teenagers who are wanting to be their own person, right? Because I work with not just little children. I work with children all the way to about, I think we're 17 right now. I'm working with them too. That's difficult because they are wanting to be their own person. They're wanting to step out into this world, but they're not quite ready yet. So there's this struggle between parent and child of how much do I let them do? And it's definitely not as much as they want to do. Right. So where do we meet in the middle there too? So this is always something that as parents we're going to struggle with. But the more we learn to calm ourselves, to take a step back, try to put ourselves in their shoes. Right? Even in that 4-year-old, 3-year-old shoes, put yourself in their shoes and say, what must they be feeling right now? It's different than what I can feel because I can be a little more rational. Right. But they can't be as rational. So how can I help them best? Because I know my child. Right.
That is really good advice.
Good.
This has been such a wonderful podcast, and I am so glad that you were here.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on the podcast because I know that a lot of people who are watching probably just got a whole lot of really good notes.
I hope so.
Yes, absolutely.
I hope, I love to talk about children. I love to talk about how we as families can communicate and interact better. Right. So I'm glad I could be here to do that today. And
absolutely.
Hopefully that did give a little bit of help to anyone who needs it.
Well, I think it gave a lot of it. It gave a lot of it to me. So
well, good. I'm glad.
And I really do think we need to do a second part at some point talking about this, when our brain goes into lizard brain mode.
Yes.
And so we will definitely have to get you back on the podcast.
Do that.
Good. Yes. Thank you very, very much so much. This is a great start.
Well, good. So, thank you for having me.
You bet, of course. Thank you so much for watching the Unveiled podcast today. Stick around for next week when we will bring on another special guest for our parenting series. But until then, we'll see you next time. Bye.